Excuse me, my name is John Butterly. I'm the Executive Medical Director of Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and I've had the honor of being able to work with just some spectacular people at the medical center, but in the community as well. And every day I was absolutely amazed at what a fantastic community we live in. Really special. Today we're going to be talking about the people who went to Haiti. And I want to say that they represent a much larger community, and not just at the medical school, but throughout the Upper Valley, of people who are really committed to what I think are the best of humanistic values. This slide shows Team 1, and this was the first group that we sent. It included 2 trauma surgeons, 2 orthopedic surgeons, and 2 anesthesiologists, and nurses that were specifically skilled in disaster relief, and they went to Hinche, which is on the Central Plateau. This is Team 2. Just there, this is inside the terminal at the Signal Air Lebanon Airport. This was a group. We were really working with Partners in Health on not just a day-to-day basis, but an hour-to-hour and a minute-to-minute basis, to provide what they felt was absolutely needed on the ground. What was absolutely needed on the ground at that point, and this was 3 or 4 days after Team 1 left, I think, were nurses. So nursing care, absolutely critical. And in fact, my understanding was Haiti was becoming swamped with surgeons with nowhere to go. And you know, a surgeon, and I'm a cardiologist, doctors in general are very good at certain things, but we always have to hand it off to the nurses, and without the nurses, we're dead in the water. So there's one physician, Jim Geiling, who we're going to hear from, and then 8 nurses. Team 3, this is a spectacular story. I got an email at 4:30 in the morning, and please don't ask me what I was doing looking at it at 4:30 in the morning, that a kidney doctor, a nephrologist with the ability to give dialysis was very, very badly needed. Dr. Remillard, who was sitting there, had told me that actually day 1 and wanted to go day 1, and we all said, no, Brian, hold off, that's not needed right now. And of course he was right and everybody else was wrong. I let Brian sleep for another half an hour and called him up at 5 in the morning. At 11 in the morning, he was on a plane with a portable dialysis unit and everything he needed to begin dialysis at a site where they didn't even have blood pressure cuffs. And did it successfully and safely, and was able to teach people there how to do this. Just an incredible story, and that's because everybody said yes right along the way. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we will do it, and we're able to deliver that. Team 4 and 5. Team 4, Peter Wright, one of our infectious disease specialists, who's been working in Haiti for decades, actually, in an HIV AIDS clinic in Port-au-Prince, and he was already planning to go, and he went down on a Partners in Health plane. The cast of thousands. The cast of thousands are the people at Dartmouth Hitchcock who for years have been doing things like this on their own. Doctors, nurses, people in administration, people in their families who have been going to under-resourced countries and delivering care on their own time, with their own dollars. And I want to make sure that we understand that there are people who have been doing this for a long, long time. And the other cast of thousands are the people who stayed home, who very badly wanted to go and felt badly if they weren't chosen, but they stayed back and they covered. They covered their colleagues, so their colleagues could go and deliver this care, but that we could maintain our primary mission, which is the health of people in this region. This is my last slide. This is Team 6. Team 6 is the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center Auxiliary Volunteers. These are volunteers at the medical center who run the Pink Smock. That's our gift shop. They pick people up at the door. They help them get where they need to go. They're all volunteers, and they've asked me to read this. This is their contribution to the effort. The enclosed check in the amount of $20,000 is a gift from the DHMC Auxiliaries Reserve Fund to Partners in Health in support of relief efforts in Haiti. The gift is made possible by the proceeds of the volunteer-run Pink Smock gift shop which provides funding for the auxiliary's annual grant awards to Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center departments and programs. We are pleased to be able to use a portion of these funds to assist Partners in Health's work in Haiti. And I'd like to ask Molly Bodie to come up and accept this for Partners in Health and President King. So just spectacular people throughout the community who want to make a difference. And now you're going to find out that I'm challenged on a Mac. For some reason, this, uh-oh. We're in trouble now. I think I got it.
Yeah, red dot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So our next speaker is Dr. Jim Geiling. Jim is the Chief of Medicine at the White River Junction VA, and he was the team lead of Team 2. Let me see if I can get this for you. There you go.
Very good, John. Well, thank you very much. Raj and I were trying to decide how long to talk and what we should do, and I promise you, despite all the slides that you saw there real quickly, this will go fast. But I thought it was really important to at least give you some images, and that might evoke some questions from the audience. And so we'll tell a story of our story. It obviously started with a little bit of snowstorm there, which we wish we had a little bit more of. This is who we are. And Deb and Carol can't make it tonight. They're working, and Brian wasn't able to make it here. Rachel was my assistant, and she's sitting up front here. And the other person is Ann, who started out with us, and then there must have been something we said. She went on with Brian up to Hinche, so she ended up coming home a little bit later. She takes the record for the longest time being deployed. So we left at this time. We actually had to get a flight into Santo Domingo. That's where we spent the first night. We went into Port-au-Prince through the Himini gateway the next day, and then returned there on the 30th. It was a pretty nice way to start. We went to a nice hotel down there in Santo Domingo, and it was a nice way to sort of break in. But then we started working our way up through the border and finally arrived there sometime in the middle of the day and spent our time trying to get a sense of, actually, we didn't even know we were already in Haiti when we got there. We had to sort of orchestrate our ride. So while we were waiting there, we just sort of watched the traffic, most of it leaving the country. And if you want to, you can read Greg's story in the Valley News. They spent a fair amount of time there at this border crossing. And so a really nice article in the Valley News about this, sort of the egress and the transients moving back and forth across the border. But while we were there, we made a couple of friends and whiled away our time while we were finally waiting for our ride to show up, and then started to work our way down into Port-au-Prince. This is where we were headed. It's been the capital for quite some time. It's a reasonably large city. It's reasonably dense, and it does have a sister city with a lot of folks from Haitian descent living in Miami. It's down there on the water. We sort of came in there to the east, and you can see geographically the distance between where we are and where Hinche is, was where the other team was located. It was pretty evident that as we started working our way into town that we were heading towards the epicenter of the event, because sort of small little buildings and then larger buildings started to become collapsed, and it actually became even more problematic just to work your way through the city. And then we started to see some of the issues that you would imagine that people having to go through when their entire city has sort of collapsed around them. And so obviously a lot of desperation and despair, and a lot of poignant stories as you were working your way into the hospital. This is where we were headed. We came in by the airport up there at the top of the screen, and we're heading down to the University Hospital, which was right dead center downtown Port-au-Prince. This is an aerial view of what it looked like before everything was taken down. This is sort of where we came in, you know, early in the day, every day at the main gate. If you read the article in the Valley News, that center courtyard, which has historically been a park, affectionately became known as the forest, and you'll see pictures of patients laying out in the forest. The operating rooms, we were right next to that, and then the morgue right down the street. It was pretty chaotic the day we showed up. We didn't really have a lot of rides. Fortunately, the 82nd Airborne was there to provide security, but they also weren't going to let us on the campus. There wasn't enough room, but we eventually worked our way on and tried to secure our gear. which is sort of piled in the back of all of these vans, and then started walking past the patients who were sitting there in a forest to try to find a place where are we going to secure the gear and how are we going to get to work. But it didn't take long. People quickly, we found a place to dump our stuff. Hopefully it was going to be there back in the evening, and then sort of, okay, you can look, everybody's still smiling and well pressed. That was obviously day one. Then sort of quickly looked away around the campus. This is unfortunately the nursing school there on the right-hand side that collapsed. There's a fair number of nursing students and physicians that died in there. They pulled bodies out while we were there. Unfortunately, the supply tent was right down the street from that, and so as the bodies started to smell while we were there for the next week, that was coming out of this building here. And the forest was just sort of this ungangly sort of scenario of where our patients were, and it really was sort of chaotic, and we were trying to figure out exactly where to go. We were pretty tired by the first day. We had all our gear. We didn't know exactly sort of where we were going to go, but fortunately we had some help there. We at least felt safe. And as a matter of fact, I had 5 guys, armed with M16s ready to roll with us up the hill because we didn't know where to go, but then we didn't have a vehicle for them, so we went on our own. The next day we started working our way down, and this was a daily ride. And if you read the stories in the Valley News, I think it was appropriate. We would start the day sort of in this little respite, and I'll show some pictures of that later, but as you sort of head down into town, you start to see the chaos of the building and the mountain right across the street from us, and that you start to get the smells, you start to get the noise, you start to get a sense of what's happening in the city. You go past the immigration and people trying to get out of there. A lot of people are showing up. It was a dog and pony show there for a while. Jesse Jackson was there, and of course a whole host of other people sort of showed up. But pretty soon, it didn't take long. The next day we found a building that we thought was secure, set up a post-operative ward. That was sort of the setting right there. It was an old administrative building because the surgery ward and building had been condemned, and so sort of started in with routine post-op wound care, established where your nursing area was, where the meds and the like were going to be. Unfortunately, that night when everybody was tucked in, we thought we were all set, but then we had a tremor that took place, and then the next morning we came, and this is where our patients were. The Haitians had said, the heck with that, we are out of this building. So suddenly, everything that was nice and neat and packaged that you had just seen in that nurse's station was now somewhere scattered around out here in the forest, and what we had to do was try to find the appropriate place to where these patients were, what were the condition, and how were we going to initiate therapy with them. And that was sort of day 2 or 3, that was sort of where our post-op ward was and how we sort of gave care under the tents, sort of in that chaos. And as you can imagine, unfortunately, not everybody survived. So this was sort of our daily routine. Once we got into it, we would go down, spend the day, catch a ride, sort of on our way back. Had a really nice place. This was guests of Partners in Health, a family member. He was actually back in the States, so we stayed with them. Reasonably well secure. We didn't see this the first night we were there, but if you look real close down there in the lower left corner, you'll see that it is surrounded by concertina wire. So that was a little bit of a comforting factor once we saw that in the daylight. It did give us an opportunity to get our gear together in the morning, and if you will, catch up with some of our work and our journaling, and then sort of get our game face to get back on downtown, because this again was sort of the daily routine heading back downtown. Just imagine going by the Capitol building in DC every day, and this is what their Capitol looks like. And this whole square, sort of like the mall in DC. Imagine the Smithsonian being down. This is their Capitol, their Ministry of Justice, their Department of Health. All of that is totally pancaked. And so you can imagine what that's like and has done to that culture, and then obviously the people living out there. Brian went to work in the operating room. Worked with some teams there from Mount Sinai who were there under Partners in Health, as were some teams from Boston, and that included folks from the Brigham as well as from Children's. And so just a lot of people sort of came out to help, and these are some really, as an old Army guy, really some poignant things. You don't see this side to the Army, and here's a kid, taking care of a child with his M16 on the back. This is home for the next couple of days. It says Norwegian Hospital, but we quickly took that down and put up the Dartmouth tent. And the Dartmouth monocle, as you see, this was home in our post-op ward, and if you look right down there to the right-hand side, we were right close to the morgue. 2 days before we showed up, this street was filled with bodies, and there was still remnants of that sort of walking around. It was kind of slippery pavement. Paul Farmer paid a visit, so being there with Partners in Health was a really nice thing to have Paul show up, so he spent some time with us. even though he had his knee brace with him. Saw a lot of cases, saw a lot of tetanus. You know, you don't even think that you would sort of see tetanus. A lot of wounds, and I apologize, but some really horrific wounds, and you know, our folks did just unbelievable jobs in taking care of them surgically and, you know, from a nursing perspective and the like. And it just was an intense daily, twice a day, you know, in the heat with the basic rudiments of care that you were supposed to be able to do. You made it up yourself. This is, you know, making your own bacon solution. So it was, in essence, in some ways, Civil War medicine, just clean water and bandages in order to do that. You can see how innovative you get with the traction there with a bucket full of rocks, and that was the splint and the traction that we had there for some time. I lost my picture here, so I'll have to go up here. Sometimes we had to transfer people. This was an unfortunate event of an urgent medical evacuation. We tried to move a lady. If you look real closely, the unsafe, unsecure H tank of oxygen sitting in the back of that. But you did what you could do, and we transferred that. Unfortunately, the lady on the right-hand side passed away. But this was the more civil way of doing things. We had a triage system where we went through that doctor on the previous screen, tried to determine who was to go out based upon capabilities. And so if the Comfort could take X number of ships or patients to their ship, we would get those patients together. If some of the other hospitals in town, we would sort of come up with that. And then it was a triage score. You only had so many ambulance vehicles, you had so many slots, and you started to do this. And so you would sort of package them, get them onto affectionately known as the frontline ambulance, or an FLA, Kurt knows these, and then take it down to the landing strip that Jen went down to one day, and they would go from there out to the Comfort or elsewhere around the city. This was sort of really the only way of getting the critically ill patients sort of out of the town. In between, took care of who you were, the beautiful little girl who was almost passing out. Her hemoglobin was 3 with a little bit of blood transfusion and oxygen she was eating by the end of the day. So some remarkable cases that we saw. This is our way we prevented clots in your legs. So instead of heparin, you actually walk them around, even though they had an external fixator sitting there on her right-hand leg, or sometimes the patients got up on their own, whether they had an entire leg or not. One of our favorite patients had his jaw wired shut. We were scrambling to find the best food for him because that was kind of a tough thing. Didn't know if he had any parents, and it was still in the place when we left. And it was obviously a very tearful goodbye, especially for some of our folks here, because it was really close. And the good news is we worked ourselves out of a job. So by the end of the time, our Haitian nurses and staff were coming back to work. They were starting to feel comfortable. We were starting to feel comfortable that we had transitioned the care process over to them, and it was time to leave. So gave a lot of warm hugs, a lot of tears before we left. Had our last picture with our translators and our nurses, and then took one last look around town to just sort of see, because we had sort of been locked into going to the same sites every day, but just you can just imagine of the scope of just sort of going through your entire town that looks like this, and people are still asking for help sort of wherever you went. Did get a look at the Comfort. We're never able to get out there. The day we left, they had 1,300 staff, 1,100 patients, and I have friends who work out there. I can tell you they're doing yeoman's work, and with a lot of support from Mercy Corps, Project Hope, and some other NGOs that are helping the Navy who are out there. But we knew it was time to leave. We'd had enough. So we unpacked the plane that picked us up the next day and made it back here safe and sound on the night of the 30th. You know, we were really honored to be at the tip of the spear, if you will. We had a great opportunity to do a terrific mission, and we think we touched, there's obviously a lot of lives to affect down there, but we think we touched a lot of lives. But it was really the whole group of people back here who sort of made this happen, from all the groups sitting in this audience, all our peers, and Molly and Rob and our families who gave us unbelievable support. And so with that, I'll pass it on to the next team. Thank you very much.
Jim, thank you very much. I want to say, because he didn't say this, so I'm going to say it. There was a blog from Boston Children's Hospital, and a fairly long description, but there was a paragraph that describing the chaos, and one of the things in there is that said there is a team from Dartmouth-Hitchcock. These people are amazing. They are absolutely the best team down there. So this is, Boston Children's group is not given to easy flattery. So, and one other thing, which is absolutely, if you know surgeons, you know that this is the greatest flattery you can have. When they would be finished with their surgery, they would write their post-op notes, and in those post-op notes it said, "Discharge to the Dartmouth tent." That's because they knew their patients would get great care. So that was terrific. So there it is. Raj Gupta led the first team. Raj is the head of our trauma service, and that's all for you. Thanks.
Good evening. So over the next few minutes, I'll present to you perhaps a slightly different experience. It's in many ways similar, but in some ways slightly different. So this was Team 1. As you know, the tragedy occurred on Tuesday on January 12th, and we sort of got the call Friday morning, January 15th, to get going. And early morning, Saturday, January 16th, we took off from Lebanon Airport and started getting ready to leave. Just want to introduce the team real quick, starting from left to right. Left is Carter Dodge, our anesthesiologist. Next to him is Kevin Armstrong. Kevin is here. Kevin, wants to give a quick wave. He is one of the ED nursing directors and has a lot of experience in ED emergency department nursing. Next to him was Phil Bernini, orthopedic surgeon, sitting at the panel. With Anthony Albert next to him, the orthopedic resident that joined us. Anthony's here as well. And then the short guy in the middle is obviously me. And then next to me is Kim Gagnon, who's one of our ICU nurses. Kim's here as well, I think. Kim, just want to give a quick wave. Next to her is Kurt Reinhardt, one of my partners. He's another trauma surgeon that joined us, and Kurt's here as well, the front row. Next to him is Mike Hawkins, who's a nurse anesthetist in our operating room. He unfortunately could not be here at this session. He's still working. And then finally, Chris O'Connell, one of our nurses in our air flight program, and he's sitting in the front row as well. I was lucky enough to have a very experienced team as well. Three of those providers had spent a fair amount of time deployed to the military in Iraq, and each of them had spent well over a year over there. And I was lucky enough our team that we had to mobilize so quickly had a fair amount of experience amongst them. As you heard in the last talk, in Port-au-Prince is, I don't know if this laser works, and Hinche, laser doesn't quite show up, but if you go about 60 miles northeast of Port-au-Prince, you'll see in the central plateau there next to the word center, the city of Hinche. It's a city of about 100,000 people. Although it's 60 miles from Port-au-Prince, it took about 4 hours to drive it, given the lack of infrastructure and lack of real roads in the area. Let me just go back for 1 second. We did the same. We actually landed in Santo Domingo Saturday afternoon, and then crossed the Dominican Republic through Elias Pina there, right above the Dominican Republic, heading towards Conge. Conge is a city. It's not on this map, but it's right next to Mirabelais, just north of Mirabelais and south of Hinche, about probably 30 miles south of Hinche. And Conge is really the place where our Partners in Health has really established their network and established a very functional hospital, and has really has a very functional integrated program going in Conge. And we weren't really sure where we were going to end up when we got there. So our first place after we crossed the border, we had to spend the night at the border in the Dominican Republic, and then crossed over the following day. Stayed in a hotel probably not as nice as the one Team 2 stayed in Santo Domingo. The first hotel we got to, they said, we have no rooms available right now, but in an hour we'll have 7. The next hotel said the same, and finally, third hotel, we found a clean hotel at 2 in the morning. So then we got to Conge, and as we looked around Conge, this was our first real sight of what was going on down there in Haiti. Obviously, Conge and Hinche were not nearly as affected by the initial earthquake, although it did have some, we did see some houses collapse and some buildings collapse, but the physical devastation was quite less than what you saw in the previous talk. But obviously you can see this is their pre-op area. All these patients were awaiting surgery. It was the floor of a church. in their medical facility that they had started setting this up. And we spent a couple hours in Conch and then decided that giving all the resources and our team would best be deployed to Hinche. And so we got in the cars and traveled another 20, 30 miles further north and arrived at St. Therese Hospital in Hinche. And as I said, Hinche is a city of originally was about a city of 100,000. From what I understand, that population is now up to about 400,000 within the last few weeks, because everybody's obviously leaving Port-au-Prince and migrating to other parts of Haiti. The Ministry of Health is based in Hinche, and so this hospital actually is in existence for about 80 years as a 200-bed facility that we sort of established ourselves at. And this was really the primary entrance where most of our patients would come into the hospital and so forth. The hospital is a very colonial-style structure. As you can see, it surrounds a couple of courtyards with these open hall sort of passageways with the wards that really have no glass in the windows. Everything is, and the doors are essentially wide open to the outdoor environment. And these passageways get fairly crowded, and as patients and families are just waiting to be seen or waiting to get care. Example of some of the wards, a lot of these wards were just large rooms. For example, one was just a surgical male ward, another was a surgical female ward. These wards would have 20 to 30, sometimes 40 beds, just sort of spread out. This is just part of one of the wards that you can see. This is their ICU, and the reason it's an ICU is because it actually has oxygen tanks in it. Oxygen was obviously a commodity and very difficult to get, but that's what comprised an ICU. No one could imagine any sort of ventilator or any advanced sort of equipment. As you can see, also complete lack of monitoring or anything else as well. This is a picture of one of their pediatric rooms. Our team conducted rounds twice a day in the morning, and then as well as at night. I'll show you another picture of the night rounds, but we really tried to function fully as a team, taking all the patients, assuming they were just a team's patients. We really worked together as an integral team to see all the patients together all the time. And these are wards at night, rounds at night. As you can see, when the sun goes down, these large 30 to 40 bed wards get fairly gloomy. They're one light bulb or perhaps two energy efficient light bulbs light the whole ward. And it really can be a fairly down, the mood is very down, and I don't want to say depressing, but it is a really gloomy sort of environment. And we would make rounds using headlights. The type of injuries, as you'd predict, we primarily saw obviously a lot of crush injuries, a lot of extremity type of crush injuries. It was a sort of trifecta. We had crush syndrome, as well as these patients were dehydrated because of lack of IV fluids, and it was hot and evaporative loss and so forth. And because of lack of adequate pain medications, a lot of patients received nonsteroidals, which really all three factors contributing significant renal failure. And that's why you'll hear the next talk, having Dr. Remillard come by and help us out and begin dialysis was vitally important. All these patients with these crush syndromes, the incidence of renal failure was very high. You can see, looking at x-rays, only diagnostic studies we essentially had no vital signs because there was no blood pressure cuffs. A couple of those old-fashioned mercury thermometers could be found somewhere in the hospital. Otherwise, you had a pulse. As far as diagnostic studies, essentially no labs, no cultures, and x-ray. We had the ability to get plain x-rays for a few hours a day because it really consumed a lot of power to get those x-rays. And Hinche is not on the grid, so it was really generator run, and fuel was obviously very scarce and very expensive. And we really know a lot of x-ray boxes we'd be using the sunlight or headlamps to illuminate our x-rays and take a look at what we could see. Over the course of about 6 or 7 days that we were there, clinical days as far as operating goes, we did about almost 50 cases. Again, primarily a lot of crushed extremities, open and closed fractures, complex wounds. We actually took care of a few burns. And, one of the interesting things we found was, despite this tragedy and all the injury we're seeing, life goes on. I mean, throughout the week, there were babies being delivered, C-sections being performed, and we had to continue to help out and support, the ongoing daily care of all the patients, all the denizens of Hinche in the area. We really, again, even in the operating room, tried to work as a team. This lady, unfortunately, needed bilateral amputation, so Doctors Bernini and Albert took one side, and Drs. Reinhardt and myself took the other side, and we worked together to optimize the timing and the flow of the whole procedure. You know, obviously you've heard lots of stories. The logistics were difficult. Supply chains were compromised due to just lack of infrastructure, lack of ability to get any supplies anywhere. When they did get somewhere, just the lack of organization, just because of the overall devastation and the loss of personnel. This was one of the supply rooms at the hospital we were at, and you can see the sort of the disorganization and so forth. And we were trying to help. We brought supplies ourselves, and supplies kept coming in, and the whole community of Dartmouth has been tremendous in this, in supporting that. But really, ongoing efforts to bring the supplies to the bedside and actually have an impact on patient care. You heard about improvisation and so forth. It's a duct tape and bag bomb, right? We didn't have the bag bomb, but we had the duct tape and PVC piping and so forth, and a little bit of rope, and using being innovative and how to do attractions for fractured extremities. Again, you heard about Team 2 setting up the post-operative recovery area, and that we did as well, our PACU. Quite frankly, the concept of a PACU was somewhat foreign, at least at the hospital we were at. Obviously, we all know post-anesthesia recovery for patient safety is vitally important, and I think that's one of the things that we introduced and was very readily accepted by the local providers, and we're hoping that's an ongoing sustainable concept that they really bought into. This is the chief of surgery, but quite frankly, the only surgeon remaining at the hospital, Dr. Prince Pierre. We really worked very closely with him. When we arrived, you know, there were local providers that were providing care, and they were taking care of their own countrymen, and we really did not want to take the approach where we're coming in just to take over or try to take over the place. What we tried to do was really integrate ourselves within the local sort of system and help support the local providers. And I think we were fairly successful in sort of working with them, developing a relationship, developing a trust amongst each other, and really having a collaborative sort of effort over the course of the time we were there, and really created a friendship. Dr. Prince, as the last day I was leaving, was suggesting that he was hopefully going to try to make his way up to Dartmouth at the end of February and spend a few days here as well. And I look forward to that visit. You know, our team really looked for sustainability. We really didn't want to just come in for 7 to 10 days, do what we needed to do, and quote leave. We really tried to create concepts and products or services that could be sustainable, that could go on long after we were gone and other teams were gone, such as the post-operative recovery unit, PACU. And this is a class where we're just teaching basic resuscitation techniques, in trauma and injury and so forth, and how to approach injured patients, the ABCs and things we just think are so basic, but really education is going to be vitally important in the long-term sort of support of these people. Despite all the sort of potential despair that you might anticipate, we found we were really humbled and amazed by what we saw. And the Haitian people, they're very resilient. We saw strength and really hope despite all destruction. And this was our greatest reward. I mean, every day we do rounds and see these smiles and give them the lollipops, and it really made it really seal the deal. I think this picture, you've seen it, some of the flyers and so forth, sort of captures the essence of what we really hope to do, and that's just really integrate with the Haitian people and show them that we're really here as brothers and sisters, and really to try to help them recover from this tragedy. So then our team obviously changed a little bit. Team 1, Drs. Remillard and Ann Rosick joined us from teams 2 and 3, and got the first dialysis ever run in the Central Plateau area. And again, I think you'll hear from Brian in a few minutes, but did a tremendous job of hopefully creating another, well, at least initially, a feasibility study where we said it was feasible to do dialysis there, where a place where there's no running water, electricity from generators, no blood pressure cuffs and so forth, and now we're hoping we also have a sustainable product as well. So really, we'd like to thank, you've heard from Dr. Geiling as well. Since we've been back here, I've received so many thank yous and so on and so forth, and quite frankly, it's not that we deserve the thank yous, it's all of you that deserve the thank yous. We were just lucky and privileged ones to be chosen to go, and we really like to thank, obviously, our clinical colleagues who filled in for us and allowed us to go, the leadership of Dartmouth-Hitchcock,
their support. And every day I was on a conference call, and it was just nice to hear the familiar voices and all the support, tremendous support they gave us. Obviously, Partners in Health with all the logistical help, and they really made us feel, quote, very comfortable during our stay there, and we're tremendous. And finally, you, the Dartmouth community, Dartmouth College, the leadership, President Kim, the students. I mean, to raise the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Dartmouth community has raised is just absolutely tremendous, and that's really where the thank yous belong. So we thank you for the privilege.
Raj, thank you so much. What Raj isn't telling you is that by the time that team left, the staff at the hospital in Hinche said that they wanted to form a sister hospital relationship with us and hoped for a long-term relationship, and suggested they change the name of their hospital to Dartmouth-Hitchcock. So, which sounds good to us. We're going to hear from Brian Remillard now. Brian's a nephrologist and our section chief of nephrology, which is the study of kidney disease and the care of patients with kidney disease, and he has a video for us. I've known Brian for at least 25 years or longer, and the thing, now Brian is a special person. The thing about Brian is that he will come to you with what sounds like the most outlandish, incredible idea, and while you're explaining to him why you really can't do that, he will have done it. Brian.
Thanks, John. I'm not sure if I was picked to be Team 3 by myself because of size, but in any event, this was a real odyssey for me. As John told you, I got pretty short notice. I had read articles about crush injuries and the importance in earthquakes, and so I thought that was going to be the major focus of my going down there. Just the ride down, I mean, I ended up on this private jet with all this equipment. You can imagine the adrenaline rush, and then touchdown in Palm Beach, and that was the last nice feeling I had. After that, it was an hour and a half to Port-au-Prince, and I said, what other way could you land? Within a minute, we were on the tarmac at Port-au-Prince. We were supposed to land at 5, we landed at 5:01, which was kind of surreal. The minute the door opened, the heat just poured into the cabin. There were 3 folks on the ground from Partners in Health with a pickup truck who said, throw the stuff in here, and I didn't know who they were. They had told me there was only one person that I could contact when I got off the plane. I couldn't find Loon right away. Eventually she came out, but we were loading this pickup truck with all the dialysis supplies, and narcotics. I had a letter that basically said, I'm a friend of the Haitian government, not trafficking narcotics. And so then I said, I have to stay with this truck, and just to give you an idea of the logistics, we spent 2 hours there. Paul Farmer came to the airport, he met a lot of people, and then decided we have to go to General Hospital. I said, so I'll be going with the truck. They said, no, you're going in this car. I took my gear off the truck, and they said the truck will be secure. The next day, Ann Rosick was assigned to me, which she may not have forgiven me for yet, but Ann and I became a team, and we said, okay, we just need the truck. They said, what truck? And then we asked several times, and they finally said the truck has been unloaded, and it's in the depot. So we went to the depot, and we couldn't find any of the gear. So then we had this driver, the only Haitian name I could remember easily, his name was Bob. And we said, is there some other depot? They said, there's a ministry building that they call a private depot. I said, take us there. We went there and we found piles of materials from around the country, and we saw our Pelican case. And so we loaded that, we loaded the narcotics. This truck was even smaller than the first, but we couldn't find the fluid for dialysis, which made it pretty useless. So I said, take us back to the main depot, and that's the little YouTube video. We went back there and said, Prismasol, and they said Prismasol, and we found that, headed out of town, and then made it up to Hinche. I think, I'm an internist, so I'm a little different than the guys, the trauma surgeons and this sort of thing. And this was unbelievable experience for me to see the level of medical care and the lack of information which we usually have to make medical decisions. The surgical team integrated Ann and I instantly into the arena, and we tried to, we did do dialysis on the one lady who you saw had bilateral amputations. They tried to do anesthesia the day before, and she crashed. She had a hemoglobin of 4, and was quite ill. 20 minutes after we set up the first dialysis ever done in Hinche, the generator went down and the whole system shut down. So we had to get the generator booted back up. So that reminded me of the title of Paul Farmer's book, which is Mountains Beyond Mountains, and in Creole it's Des Monts Gaimons, which is once you hit one obstacle, there's one more behind it. And it became quite clear what that saying means whenever we tried to do anything in this environment. I must say I've never seen anything like this because I don't do trauma surgery like these folks do, but as a medical person, I started to go around the wards with Ann, and we started to do the medical thing, which was try and identify who was sick, who was septic, whose dressings need to be changed, and as a nephrologist, who was dehydrated. But the simple things were not easy. All the IV bottles down there were empty. All the IVs would run out. The nurses wouldn't renew them. They had these funny bottles that were like Coke bottles. So you would start the IV, it would run, but you had to actually poke a hole in the top to keep it running. And no one would go around and poke a hole in the top. So you'd come back to see these kids who had resuscitated the day before, and they were completely dehydrated again. There were no baby bottles. So when you wanted to give the kid oral rehydration solution, if the mother had an old water bottle, they might use that, but there was no simple way to give them fluid. The way you figured out people were septic, since you couldn't take a temperature, was you just looked around for who was raggering or who was sweating, and you put your hand on them and you felt they were hot, and that's how you decided who got antibiotics. Way, way away from anything we do here. You couldn't culture anybody. The charts were very difficult to read. I'm pretty fluent in French, but it was really hard to go through there for an internist to find out what toxic drug people had been put on. They couldn't trust the staff to give morphine on the floor because it might disappear, so they had everyone on non-steroidals, which is, if you're a kidney specialist, is the worst thing you could do. In any event, we found, just as we were going to leave Port-au-Prince, we found this camera, this video camera. Actually, there was a box sitting on top of this pile, and Ann said, "Isn't that a box that was in the depot?" And I said, "I guess so." And it had Jim Geiling on top, so I cut this box open, and inside, I thought it might be narcotics. It turns out to be a video camera. And so we took it with us, and Tom Kidder. Well, I can tell you this, we weren't going back to Port-au-Prince. So we took this camera and filmed video. I thought it was important to film what was going on there, to document just what happened. I think this is an important record. I filmed some of it. Our translator, Cedric Blaze, filmed some of it. Ian filmed some of it. And so Tom Kidder kindly put this together for us.
Major disaster may be unfolding right now in Haiti, hit today by a powerful earthquake. It was a magnitude 7, possibly the strongest quake ever to hit that region.
Kind of going rounds. No idea of the layout, so. Bonjour. Bonjour.
As we watch Dr. Remillard learn how to put in an essential line.
725, or if you're in our new world, 1925. The dialysis has gone along really well. Okay, so this little guy's got a femur fracture and he's smiling, no pain. And she's getting cleaned up this morning. Do you know her name?
Where's Fresno?
Where is he? Where's your buddy?
Where's Fresno?
What'd you pull her, Alexandria?
Just
Alexandria.
This connecting piece prevents the cast material from breaking. This is a tube from a chest tube, so we found another use for some equipment that we weren't using at the time. He's a sweetie pie. Oh, is he smiling?
Go ahead, Phil, you're on.
Bilateral femurs and a pelvic fracture, and her hemoglobin on rounds was 3.3. She'll do all right, but she'll probably require in her age group somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks of traction.
He's a 30-some-odd-year-old gentleman who was trapped with his wife and his baby in Port-au-Prince. His wife expired next to him while they were waiting rescue.
People that don't, they like to put a little thing in their dossier to. This is the kidney. Coupé comme lupin in what is that? Corona.
It's our 3-year-old burn child. Got redebrided today. Looked a little bit better in the operating room. Back at home, he would be at the Shriners Burn Center. Here, we're doing what we can, and hopefully that will be enough for this young gentleman. Seems to be sleeping right now.
What about
This will be your tubing in order to hook up so all the bad fluid can go off into a trash can we're going to get, okay?
Comment allez-vous? Bien. Tout va bien? Pas trop de douleur? Non? Ça va?
While she's eating and she was able to see the clothes that start moving, shaking. She didn't even have the time to even lift her leg to run. And at the same time that she realized that Clary, all the floor just collapsed on her. She spent the whole night inside the house under the concrete. She was hurting, she had unbearable pain. And she lost her mom on the spot because her mom was in the hospital. They couldn't find her head, so they had to pull her from her legs.
A large block of concrete came down on her legs, giving her very nasty open fractures of both bones in her legs. We obviously didn't get here until 4 or 5 days after the injury. So our first trip to the operating room was to clean up things and assess the damage.
We're doing ultrafiltration. We're going to try to get some fluid off. It's different from what I've normally done back at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, so this is an experience for me as well as the people here at Hinche Hospital. Dr. Kruk was quite active in helping to set up the machines, so this way he would be key as to troubleshooting for people here at Hinche when Dr. Remillard and I leave.
Okay, so now we're here in the kitchen. This is basically where they prepare 3 meals a day. They're doing their best. Pure beans and some meat bullet. Usually they serve them in the morning some spaghetti as breakfast. And at night after lunch they serve them some hot chocolate and bread as dinner.
I was very pleased when I came in. She gave me a hug, which warmed my heart. It made it all worthwhile. So we're going to try to teach the Haitian nurses how to work the dialysis machine.
This is all of Josette's family. I think everybody's upset that she had the amputations, but everybody's very pleased that she's alive.
Brian, thank you very much for that, and thank you for the media service and to Tim for putting that together so quickly. We have some time, and I thought that we would have time for people to ask questions of the panel members or the other members of the team, but I'm wondering if maybe I could ask the first question of Rachel. Rachel has been in other areas of the world delivering care in underserved areas and resource-poor areas, and I'm wondering, Rachel, if you could tell us what surprises did you have when you get to Haiti, and how would you compare it to your other experiences?
Well, most of the places I've worked in internationally have been post-conflict or areas where they're just struck by abject poverty. And what was really different about Haiti was that it was a total disaster zone. So it's already a poor country, already has horrible infrastructure, the government's falling apart, healthcare doesn't really work. And then they get saddled with this earthquake that literally destroys everything. So when we got there, it wasn't even really like there was a function or a setting for us to enter into. It was that everyone had to become a MacGyver and assess the situation and say, all right, this is what we have to do. How can we save lives? And I think that was probably the most acute difference, is that it was just like everyone was dying, and the response had to be, at least in Port-au-Prince where we were at the hospital, it was like, I don't think any of us had ever seen anything like that at that hospital, just with people and bodies and people needing surgery and people who were dead on the road and people who were bleeding to death. And when we got there, it was kind of this overwhelming feeling of, oh my gosh, how do you even start addressing an issue like this? But what was phenomenal about our team was that we chose in the chaos to just really establish ourselves and do what we know how to do, and that's take care of people who are really sick. So we just tried to get organized, and we started off in one room where it was a disaster, and we'd just been dropped off. And there was literally people, I mean, patients who were septic, patients who, one man had a testicle that was probably this big from a crush injury, and he had gangrene that had tunneled all the way inside of his body, and they'd packed him. And he was septic and going crazy, and he's walking around the unit. We can't start a line on him. He has a high fever. He's bleeding out everywhere. And we realized we couldn't save him. So we just had to move to the next patient. And we just, I mean, it was like the worst kind of triage, because you had to choose who you thought you could maybe save, and you had to kind of bypass people that you knew you couldn't save in that environment. So that was what was very different. Normally I've done like malnutrition work or HIV work, and this was more like, all right, can we save them, or are they going to die?
Okay, thank you very much. I heard a story, Phil, and I don't want to embarrass you about this. So Phil and I are contemporaries, and we're used to practicing maybe with less of the technology that is available to us today. Not Civil War, but that's an experience that, and which we try to transmit some of that knowledge to students, because sometimes you don't have that technology, and so we have experience and knowledge to pass on so that they can function in those settings. And I kind of heard, Phil, that was of great use to your team, that you had that experience. Could you say something about that?
I think that there was this, there's this old Chinese expression when the imperial court used to give certain type of mandates that would have to go out through the entire nation, but the expression was that these mandates stopped at the village gate, and technology most definitely stopped at this hospital gate. So when you finally come down to Haiti with all of these wonderful technological things that you've been enculturated with over the years, you begin to appreciate that you can't use them. You have to basically just kind of think in terms of using the old principles that drove the appropriate care of patients back in the Civil War, at least rumored. And then you have all these wonderful methodologies that we've applied technologically, but you can't use them. And you can't use them because you can't safely do them. So you can't use electrical equipment. You don't have sterile water. You don't have antibiotics to protect you. And yet you have to be careful that you don't try to do things that really are not safely done in that type of environment. And more importantly, you have to make sure that when you leave, you don't leave this technological mess that people really can't figure out. So you could actually do harm. And again, above all in medicine, first off, do no harm. That's something that you had to constantly remind yourself. So the things that I think were guiding us as a group was, first, we had to think in terms of stabilization. You want to make things stable from an anatomical, a metabolic, a physiological state. Make things stable. Second thing you want to do is to sterilize things. Try to keep it up as clean as possible. There are flies, insects, and just bacteria that probably haven't been described yet in the literature. And then obviously, while you're doing that, you want to comfort patients. All of that, I think, can be summarized by just trying to keep it simple. If you could keep it simple, it doesn't take too much time to get it done, and people can figure it out in your absence. And that's where I think I was very happy. Someone had asked me what type of equipment I needed, and I had a tremendous list, and Anthony and I and Kurt and
Raj, we were talking all these very sophisticated bits of equipment that we really needed. But as an orthopedist, I said, well, if you could really find an orthopedist who's been retired for 30 years, that's the kind of guy, because he knows or she knows how to get things done without modern technology. And that's exactly what we needed down there.
Great, thank you. And actually, one thing that came through on that video for me, because there was some technology, because Brian brought it with him, and there were some numbers being thrown around and everything, but everybody, the pictures you saw in all the presentations is the caring and compassion of the people who were down there. And, we see that here at our hospital, and it translated so beautifully to this. Anybody in the audience have some questions? Yes. We can get a microphone to you if you'll just wait a second so people can hear.
On the news during the coverage, amid a lot of horrific images, I was struck by one mother who was sitting with her daughter that I believe needed bilateral amputations, and she was weeping in front of the child and basically saying that she couldn't wish for that fate on her child and she would rather the child die. Obviously, that's something that we don't have to deal with very often here in the United States. And I was wondering how you dealt with maybe cultural objections or personal objections to some of the things that here would have been the standard of care, or what would have been your opinion of what was best for the patients.
That's a great question. And by the way, we are sometimes faced with that here. That maybe not identically, but we have those ethical problems here. Raj?
Well, I'll just give a sort of my opinion on that. I'll tell you, our team struggled to some extent with that. There was just this acceptance of a little higher mortality, and that to some extent fatalistic. I mean, our team first got there, we rounded that night on a 11-year-old who had a crush to her torso and chest and so forth. Was obviously in severe pain and not doing well. We were frustrated with our lack of ability to help her, and the next morning she passed away. And the sort of local culture was, well, there are patients that are going to survive and patients that are not. And I think our team struggled with that initially. As time went on, we obviously began to see what they were talking about. But, there is this, number one, this sort of acceptance of, fate and mortality. And number two, to some extent they're right. When, if they can't function, they can't take care of their family, they have a sense of worthlessness that we saw a little bit of, but that all comes into play. Our lack of ability to transfer patients, because it's not just a patient you're transferring, it's a whole family you have to transfer, because a lot of these patients rely on their families for their bedside care. The nurses just were too busy. There were 30 wards, one nurse. And so the bedside care is actually provided by families for feeding and bathing and so forth. And so if you're going to think about sending a patient somewhere else, you need to send the whole support structure with that patient in order for them to get the care they need. And that was also one of the cultural struggles that we sort of struggle with ourselves.
Any other questions from the audience? I'm kind of interested. Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm John Bennett. I'm a general surgeon over in Plymouth, and I just got back after 2 weeks in Haiti, and it was quite a moving experience. I'd like to thank Phil Bernini, especially for what he did. I noticed by the films that he was wearing a surgical gown, he had sterile gloves, he used traction, everything he did looked, and he left a team there to try to follow up. That didn't happen in all cases. I was at a trauma hospital in Hinche, which you saw on the diagram. I think it's about 35 miles out of Port-au-Prince. And a lot of the surgeons came in and were a little more cowboyish in using skill drills, putting in their K-wires. Now that's maybe all they had, and they only used gloves. They didn't have gowns, so it was very difficult to watch that. And my congratulations to your team here. I think they did an excellent job. I'd also like to tell you that there are other opportunities for almost everybody. You don't have to be a medical person. They need a lot of help. Pharmacists, just people to organize all those materials you saw on the floor, they need a lot of help. There are many NGOs over there, and you can tie up with them. The politics of the NGOs are very interesting once you get involved with them. Sterility is a big, big problem. I know, did you have a sterilizer?
I think we had a small one that's about the size of a microwave oven.
Yeah, I think I had one. There's one I had in my office that was bigger than in the hospital. But again, some of the orthopedic teams came in, and I think they were just trying to get notches in their belt by how many amputations they could do and so forth. I don't want to criticize anybody. I think some people, they had to do what they had to do, but I think these people deserved as high a level of care as you could give them, and it didn't always happen. Now, in the hospital I was in, there were about 400 people out in the fields that they wouldn't go in the buildings, as was pointed out. They wouldn't go into the hospital, and 90% of them had major orthopedic injuries, and they were suffering, but they were being taken care of, but not always at the highest level that could be done. So again, there's opportunities for many, many different capabilities. If you can't go with this team, you can tie it with other teams that are going out. There was a 4-person team out of Lancaster that went. They had they had a general surgeon and 3 of their OR staff. That decimated their whole OR staff, I think. They only probably have 8 people up there. What else? I wanted to mention, if you speak French, that's an opportunity to be a translator and so forth. I did work at a small Catholic worker clinic for several days, and at one time we had a GYN oncologist, an infectious disease person, a nephrologist, an orthopedist, a general surgeon, a pediatrician, a cardiac nurse, an ER nurse, and an OR nurse. They were all working in this clinic next to a tent village that had been set up on a soccer field. So it's amazing what you can do. You see the transition from the major orthopedics that was being done to the wound care, to the plastic surgeons, and now this is going to go on for months and years, and they really do need a lot of help. So get online and see what you can do, and again, congratulations to your team. They obviously did a great job.
So, thank you. I'm glad that you made it. Yes, and I know. And I'm glad you made it. I do want to say, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I think you've made excellent points. From my perspective, I would suggest that if you're going to go to Haiti, only go if you're connected to a group that has infrastructure there. Do not try to get there by hook or crook and just show up, because you could end up needing more care than you give. So make sure that you are actually connected to a group. Yes, please.
My name is Lisa Valdez. I teach here at the College of the Department of Government and Latin American Studies. I'm curious, based on your experiences, what your vision is for what Dartmouth and Dartmouth-Hitchcock can and should do with regard to Haiti over the long term.
Let me just sort of talk into this a little bit, because I think we've had this conversation with Partners in Health at a variety of different levels over the weeks, and I think that the greater Dartmouth community has an incredible amount to offer, not just the medical folks sitting here. And we sort of talked about, from cultural anthropology to language to music to innovations out of Thayer to economics and the medical folks sitting up here. So I think the Dartmouth community is positioned to really have a multidisciplinary sort of role, sort of in that recovery for the long term. And I can tell you that the Partners in Health people really value that long-term vision, because while they appreciated our response, disaster relief is not their lane. Their lane is sort of sustainability for the greater country and the health of the people. And this community has a lot to offer from a variety of different domains.
Taught medical students for the time I've been here since 1993. It's important to realize Haiti doesn't have a medical school anymore. It really touched me that there were students walking around, and I said, you're medical students, and then suddenly realized they had no place to go. They're in their second, third, fourth year, and there's no education for them. So we do all these video conferences all the time, and this place we were at in Hinche has the ability to have video conferencing. One simple goal would be just to try and set up some lectures for these kids so they can have some continuity in their life. And there's a variety of things you could do with nursing. The nursing school was decimated. So I think those are simple things that could happen with just a little bit of technology. You know, it's just amazing to think that that whole generation has been affected by what happened in Port-au-Prince.
Yeah. So, and as Rachel said, Haiti was kind of a disaster before this disaster. It's not going to be over for years, as you said. It is our intent, and we are having ongoing discussions with partners in health to have a long-term relationship, and by long-term we're talking about years. Our community will benefit from it, and hopefully we will bring benefit to Haiti, and our intent is to focus specifically on one area, possibly Hinche, although that's something that has to be negotiated with the Haitian government. We can only be there if they want us to be there and if they feel they need for us to be there. But it is absolutely our intention to responsibly and sustainably develop a long-term relationship between the Dartmouth community, and not just the medical community, and the people of Haiti. And I know for a fact that that Brian will give me no rest at all unless we do, so it's almost guaranteed. Yeah.
My name's David at Old School. This is not to sound negative. I think it's wonderful that everyone went, but I'm kind of curious what people think. So had Jim Kim not come here, who I love, and had there not been an earthquake in Haiti, would we have ever formed any connection there? And then my second question is, I guess I kind of worry when any organization goes kind of full force into one specific country or one place, what that means for everything else. So what will happen with our connection to Tanzania? What will happen with our connection with various underserved communities in the Upper Valley? Are we going to kind of tend to spread ourselves to? I mean, I'm glad. I think we should do this. And Haiti is a very, very, very poor country that often gets kind of forgotten about because it's so close to Florida. But so I think we should do this, but more just kind of the devil's advocate question.
Well, so that's an excellent question, and there may be other comments, and that's actually, you asked a number of questions. Would we, well, obviously if there hadn't been an earthquake, we wouldn't have had a disaster response. Would we have necessarily chosen Haiti as a place to focus? I really can't answer that. And I'm not sure we would have. I just don't know the answer to that. The fact is that it did happen, and Jim Kim is the president of Dartmouth, and that is only one of the benefits he brings to this community. We would not have done this if we were not partnered with Partners in Health. There is no, and the advice that I gave to, it's Dr. Brentwood, I'm sorry. We wouldn't have gone if we didn't have a partner there for any number of reasons, not the least of which, there's no way we were sending our colleagues into a dangerous situation without knowing that they were part of an infrastructure that was reliable and that was going to protect us and enable us to give the care that we needed to give. So it happens to be an opportunity, and we'd like to take advantage of that. We are established in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and that's a robust program, and that program will continue. It's fully funded. We have partnership there with the Tanzanians, and we will continue that relationship as we will continue our relationship in Kosovo. And we have individuals going to many other countries, Vietnam, Lima, Peru, Rwanda. We will continue that. But when asked, well, you know, are you going to form a partnership with Handicapped International? Or are you going to do a partnership with this group or that group? It's very resource intensive to develop real, robust partnerships. So I think that we have limited resources like every other organization. We're going to have this discussion, and we will make our decisions as we do routinely by consensus. That's how we do things at the medical center. My vote is going to be that we focus our resources in a way that delivers the most good, and understand we can't be everything to everybody.
I'd just like to ask a general question. There's a lot of you up in front who have had these experiences. I just would love a couple of comments from those of you who have come back and haven't spoken. If there's anything you'd like to add, I'd just love to hear from a couple of other folks.
Thank you. That would be a great thing. Actually, Kurt Reinhardt and Chris O'Connell, you were in Iraq, and I heard somebody tell me that you said that what you saw in Haiti was worse than anything you saw in Iraq. Was that true?
That's correct. When we deploy with our group, with our supplies, with our medical system, with our hospital. Our hospital's in a box, and we carry it with us. So we have all that stuff with us, and we have our own people that they were able to function with. We had our team, but that was about it. And we had a little bit of medical supplies, but there wasn't really that infrastructure that we're used to when you deploy with the U.S. government. Certainly it is austere. Certainly we deal with things that are not typical in American medicine or in the continental United States, but this was much different, vastly different. Not to find a blood pressure cuff, to swipe the flies away from a patient's wound, to find dry IVs and do some of the nursing care that was probably from Florence Nightingale's time was rather striking. So absolutely.
Kurt?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the wounds we saw were very similar to what you'd see over in Iraq, but it, you know, on the way over, we were chatting on the plane and saying how you know, we've been in austere environments before. This should be kind of what we're used to. It couldn't be farther from the truth. It was, again, as Chris said, you know, usually with the Army, we go with our equipment, our team, all our supplies, and we can set up shop and kind of, you know, have the same standard of care that we would have back home. Here we had to fall in on Haitian ORs, Haitian equipment, and it was much different. So.
Are there any other? Yes, sir.
Yes, could we hear a little bit of the background of what was going on kind of behind the scenes to make this all happen?
Maybe I'll ask Rob Gougelet to tell us. Rob is a happens to be the head of, I'm going to get this wrong, but basically the disaster relief for Northern New England. He's the physician lead for that, and he ran the emergency center at the college and was critically important with Molly Bodie, who's a presidential fellow, in doing and getting the logistics together and seeing to it that everything happened when it was supposed to, and everything happened when it was supposed to. So it's very impressive. So, Rob, what?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that, you know, the devil's in the detail in terms of everything. And so, you know, right from the start, I think the most important thing was the infrastructure that was there, and then the communications with the people on the ground to make sure that we were going to the right place with the right resources. The rest of it is just really just a lot of hard work. I mean, just coordination, communication. Molly did a great job. She was just there and really took care of a lot of details and things. You know, but the other part of it is some command and control structure, so there was an organizational reference there. We knew who was doing what. We charted levels of responsibility and accountability, and the more we did, the more complex the incident command structure looked over time. And so I think there's a lot of experience in this community in terms of responding to mass casualty events that we utilized. And so basically, I think that's the structure that was there. We staffed the EOC probably about the Emergency Operations Center about 10 or 12 hours a day, and we're on call 24/7 and told the teams we were there for the teams whenever they were out. And I think that's the support structure that you know, supported the teams that were out there. Molly, do you want to say anything?
Sure. I think it's a lot broader than that, too. I mean, over 1,300 people contributed monetarily to that, and I saw at least 80 volunteers come through the Emergency Operations Center. So the amount of effort that went into this was unbelievable and almost unparalleled, and I think it speaks a lot to the strength of our community, because it was Dartmouth College that came together, Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, and Partners in Health. And, you know, even from there, it extends to the, to Veterans Affairs and to, you know, 45 other organizations that helped us out, even the Clinton Foundation as well. So I couldn't be more proud of our response, and I look forward to the long-term one.
And so it was really organized chaos. But we were on the phone at conference calls multiple times a day with people in Boston, with people in Haiti, people at the college, people at the medical center, basically everybody on the phone saying yes, saying we're gonna make this happen. And we did, because everybody wanted it to. During part of this, somebody kind of, we were talking about making something happen, and somebody turned to me and said, you know, I'm really sorry, but I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. And I said, I hate to tell you, we're all flying by the seat of our pants. The only thing I would disagree with one thing that Rob Gougelet said, and I would say, I would tell you that God is in the details. Yeah.
I want to get back to some of what both questions before. I lived in Haiti for 2 years, 30 years ago, and one of the problems that I observed there is that it is, even though people might not be aware of it, lots of people come and try to help. And in talking with Dr. Gupta and Dr. Remillard and others after they came back, I was so impressed and respectful of their respect and the team's respect of the culture and what could be done and making it manageable, and manageable after they left, that sustainable. And as we move forward, I think the partners part, to me, is the most important part, and recognizing that the Haitian people need to take the leadership. When someone asked about the amputation and how did you deal with that, well, in Haiti, if you have an amputation, I mean, someone said this, but you're gonna die. I mean, you can't support yourself, you can't support your family, all you can do is beg. At least, you know, that's the way it's been. And I think that, so the question is it better to die or better to be helpless with amputations? And hopefully the response will change that people will be able to find a way to survive, but it's not gonna be easy. So I'm hoping that we will move forward, but that we'll move forward with the Haitians taking the lead and us providing the support in building an infrastructure that is their vision.
I think that's right. I think what sometimes they'll lead, sometimes we'll lead, sometimes we'll follow, and we have to know when to get out of the way.
John, if I could just
Yes,
say,
please.
this is just a thought. You know, as I went into this, I've done things in the community before, volunteered to coach basketball and done some little, I've never done anything like this. And I just want to encourage people as you move forward. When I was on the leaving, they said, you know, if you change your mind at any point, you can call and we'll extract you out of there. And after I touched down in Palm Beach, I thought, I wonder if now would be a good time. You don't have to be, this is the first time I've ever done anything. It's a life-changing experience. And I would just encourage other people that if you don't think you can do it, you can do it. And as this moves forward, whatever skill you have, you know, keep moving forward with the idea and don't give it up, because it's really a phenomenal experience and something that you don't have to be a hero to do.
Yeah, well, there's actually somebody in the audience who was very persistent about that. I'm very impressed. When he couldn't go with us, he saw to it that he went, and we heard from him. I would say one thing about that, and we were careful about this, but and we're very lucky about it. If you have a significant medical problem, if you think you might not be able to handle some pretty hard things, to say don't go. You can help here, but what you don't want to do is go there and then need to be cared for, or need to be extracted quickly, because it's just not, because you're in danger for one reason or another. So it's not a big, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. If you got a significant medical issue, or you're going to have trouble with the pain and suffering of others, you should stay here and help here. Yes, yeah.
Well, first, thank you. Thank each and every one of you. It's a really privilege to be here with you today. So I'm sure each of you beyond the Dartmouth response has been thinking, if only things worked this way or that way. You know, if only the response was different. You know, sort of
only for our team, was that at nighttime and when we left, we couldn't really hand off our patients to anyone. So a lot of times you'd leave and tuck them in, and there just wasn't anyone there. We had no power. We barely had running water at like day 4 when the Spanish set it up. We would literally leave at night, and you'd come back the next morning, and a lot of your patients would have died, or they would just be missing, or you didn't know where they'd gone, and it always, as a nurse or a doctor, the feeling of abandoning your patient is just the worst feeling, because if something happens to them, you could have prevented it, hopefully. So for us, I think that was overwhelmingly what we wish we could have had, was more staff there that could have facilitated covering the nights to kind of keep patients alive, as opposed to you did all you could in the 12 hours you were there, and then you just hope to God nothing happened to them afterwards. So.
Yes.
I'm sure you're all aware that Haiti didn't get in this situation before the earthquake overnight. It's been a long process. Some of it sociological, some of it governmental, some of it greed, and improper governments. Having been there and realizing that you can't take giant leaps, you have to take little baby steps to get to yes. What is your sense of the significant barriers to getting to yes for that country now that you've been there?
You're right. The more I reflected upon Haiti, basically a nation which was dragged out of slavery, abused by the colonial world, and then particularly devastated by their own dictators. This was not a fertile land for any significant improvement. The night before we left, we actually had dinner. It was kind of curious. We were taken in white Toyotas, and I'm quite sure that all of the gas pedals on this were stuck, because I don't think I've ever traveled so fast on a dirt road in all my life. And they took us to a small restaurant called the Crystal Bar, and it had been closed since the earthquake, and it had cinder blocks and some neon lights that weren't completely working, and yet when you walked in, it was like a different world. It was clean. There were some palm trees inside, and blue lights and red lights that maybe make some people enjoy that environment. And it was a large dance floor that was empty except for probably 30 brand new Chinese motorcycles, with a stage that had some murals of a Haitian band, and we were the only people there. And we were guests that night of Dr. Prince, who was a former senator in Haiti, and we also had dinner with a Dr. Raphael, who was I think he was the health minister for the central province, and so we had the opportunity of sitting with him and talking about the future of Haiti. And one thing that became quite apparent is that apparently everybody in Haiti who goes to university or professional schools, they learn their trade in French. French, however, is not spoken, it's Creole. And the difference between French and Creole is like someone from Boston and New York. They can't really communicate very, very well. 2 different languages. And yet, there's a definite difference between Prince and Raphael, who represented leadership, political leadership, as well as professional leadership, and the Haitian people that we cared for. It was, at least to me, it was a dramatic difference. Talk about a class society. It was very, very different, and it probably would take 2 or 3 generations for the people that we were caring for to be elevated to the relative professional or political sophistication of our hosts. So, in answer to your question, I think that it's going to be much, much more than reconstructing a country that has no infrastructure to reconstruct. You really do have to create. But the creation has to be very, very delicately performed, realizing that we're guests in a country that has basically been run fairly chaotically and by people who don't necessarily identify with the people that they're supposed to represent. I mean, we complain in this country, but the difference is just dramatic. It's absolutely dramatic. And unless we can get like partners who basically can deal with the Haitian host and those of us who are the guests of the Haitians, they live there, they're trying to establish a society or a system that maintains good health care. If we don't deal with them, I don't think we're ever going to be successful, because those people have been able to politically and socially interact with leadership in Haiti while not forgetting the people that we're supposed to serve in Haiti. If you can't do it any other way, it has to be a non-threatening, non-political, truly altruistic, but well-organized, well-machined and financed enterprise. But I just don't think that you can do it without that personal touch and recognizing the tremendous discrepancy between leadership in Haiti and the people that they're supposed to represent.
And is the leadership behind Partners in Health, as near as you could tell?
I think so. And I say I think so because it is curious. We were there, and we were very interested in making sure that the patients that we were privileged to care for would be able to be passed on to another group who had similar understanding. And it was kind of an uncomfortable moment for a while where we were told, well, we have another group coming in. This was by Dr. Prince. He said, we have another group coming in, and they're going to start working, and you guys can leave. And we said, well, no, we still have some work to do. And he apparently was put in an uncomfortable situation because Dr. Raphael had invited another group from Virginia to come in. So they had political issues themselves to deal with.
But Partners in Health is actually very sensitive to that, and it appears to us that they've done a good job. They've been there for forever, and they've got infrastructure. Brian, did you?
I just wanted to share two experiences. One is one morning we get up, and we ate the food that was pretty much the native food, rice and a lot of goat. And one morning we came in, and they served this, it was for breakfast, this spicy orange soup. And Dr. Kiss came in, and he said, do you know what that is? And I said, I don't know what that is. He said, that's the la soupe de l'indépendance. So every Haitian eats independent soup because that's the soup that the masters ate when they were slaves, and in 1804 when they were freed. So I didn't know. So apparently every Haitian in the world has a bowl of independent soup on January 1st, and most fairly well-to-do Haitians have independent soup every Sunday. So they shared that with us, which I thought was really remarkable. And then the last night we were there, Ann and I asked if we could go into town, and we went into town, and they were having a basketball tournament. They had a bunch of displaced kids, and the youth of Haiti is still very vibrant, and they're all plugged in with cell phones. These are kids who can change the future, I think. We were very impressed that, just to see, we had been in this devastation for more than 9 days, and the hospital, the smell of the hospital was hard to take. We went down to this downtown, and they had Haitian rap music going. They had Jimmy O, who I don't know if anybody else, I didn't know who he was, but a Haitian rapper was killed in the earthquake. That meant a lot to them. And so they had this music just blaring. But, when you see that, you think there's always hope in youth. And I think that it's not to be underestimated how vibrant the youth of Haiti is and how resilient they are and how proud the people are. So in spite of their leaders, maybe in this new age of technology, they can kind of move forward in ways that they've done in other countries because of technology.
From our perspective, and maybe the world's perspective, the earthquake in Haiti is a loud emergency, and so there's a lot of help for it. But Haiti was a silent emergency for decades, and it's going to be a silent emergency again when things start going away. So I guess what I would say is one of the biggest barriers will be when it is again a silent emergency, will we stop listening? Yeah, Mary.
I just wanted to describe a situation that I experienced here while teams were gone. I have a very ill elderly parent who's hospitalized just outside of Boston. And 80% of the nurses, male and female, who care for the patients in this hospital are Haitian. Extremely well-trained and talented nurses. And it was just so ironic to think that so many of the Haitian well-trained nurses were in and around Boston, where there's such a large community. And when I spoke with them about how they felt about that, they were saying they were desperately trying to find out whether or not their family members were alive, and they were desperately trying to raise money to send home. But they said they really couldn't go back until they had made enough money to be able to really help their families, and until there was some improvement, they were going to have to be the ones who would earn income in order to send it back. But I just thought that it's one of those problems that people have to figure out how to solve.
I'm aware, just being aware of the time, it's actually later than we thought we'd stay. So thank you all so much for coming, and thank you guys.